Hello, hello. Welcome. If you don't know me, my name's Tash. I am a yoga, Pilates and meditation teacher. I live in Cairns, far north Queensland, Australia. I am coming to you guys with a bit of a life update. I've been going through quite a lot of changes, and I guess I felt the need to touch base and address some of these things with you and what I've been moving through and what you might be able to expect from me in the future. So, long story short, you may have noticed, if you know me, if you come to my classes, that I've been a bit inconsistent, a bit MIA over the last month or so. And this is not typically me. That's not usually how I approach things. But long story short, to sum it up in one word, I've been healing mentally, physically, emotionally, in all aspects of my life. I've really needed to take a step back, which has been really hard for me. And so I've had to take a little bit of a break. I recently lost someone very close to me, and without going into detail, I think that it is important for me to share that with you and to address it, because it is the largest thing that is weighing on me at the moment in this time of my life. This is, I guess, my first experience with first-hand grief and not really knowing how the process looks for me yet. So it's been a really difficult time for me. Really stripped back my classes to the bare minimum, and I thought that would be okay. And the universe really wasn't having a bar of it, and I then injured my knee. I don't know how I did it. It got really swollen. I ended up in the emergency room because I couldn't walk. They did all of these tests. I've had x-rays, I've had ultrasounds, I've had MRIs, I've had blood tests, I've had samples of the fluid taken, and I still right now have no answers. So that is still pending. But that meant that I couldn't walk, let alone teach yoga or Pilates. So I was really forced to come to a screaming halt with everything in my life. And on the one hand, it was incredibly difficult for me because it meant that the main way in which I've been able to process in the past, through moving my body, through yoga, through Pilates, and moving the energy out of me through forms of movement, and even just going for a walk, it meant that I couldn't do that anymore. But on the flip side, I understand why this has happened, because if it wasn't for this, I truly don't think I would have been able to stop and process everything that I've processed over the last month. And what someone said to me very early on, when my knee first was injured and I tried to go back to work to teach, was that every time I need to show up for others, every time I need to put on a face and take myself out of this healing process, a little bit of emotion gets pushed down. And then little by little, every single time you show up, more and more emotion gets pushed down, and you think, I'll deal with it later. I know it's there, I'll deal with it later. And then 2-3 weeks go by and you've pushed these emotions down. And by that point, you're not feeling them, and you don't want to bring them up because you're like, oh, I know they're there, but why would I bring them up? And that really hit home to me, because I am someone that in the past has dissociated a lot from things in my life as a coping mechanism. Someone that has been extremely anxious, and dissociation is kind of a superpower of mine. It can be handy, but in the long term, it's not so good, especially when you're moving through grief and really deep, intense emotions that you don't want to be stored in the body, because over time it will start to cause dis-ease and potentially start to manifest as physical illness. So I have been really mindful to try and move through things as best as I can, even without the luxury of my usual movement practices, which has been interesting. It's been really hard. I've spent a lot of time journaling. I've spent a lot of time talking to people, and I'm so grateful for the people in my life, because I'm gonna cry. I don't know how I would have moved through this season of my life if I didn't have the support that I have. This season has been a very difficult time in my life, and it's been a lot of unknown and a lot of questions and a lot of thinking. But the theme that has continued to come up again and again, and I pulled an oracle card that I wrote it down in my journal, and it said to give up the notion that the deepest issues require the most difficult path to heal. There is a gentler way to proceed and obtain the same or even greater results. And I think that has really been my point of focus. The thing that I've tried to lean into the most is that even though things feel very difficult for me right now, the things that I'm moving through are very heavy. I don't need to place more expectation on myself, and I don't need to suffer. There's a way to move through this season with a little more grace than what maybe I would usually give myself, and especially a way that if you're consciously aware of trying to lessen the suffering, that you can then create a little more space and time for yourself to breathe and move through. And during these last few weeks, I've had a massive priority shift. I had so many goals for these last few months of the year, knowing that 2022 is almost over, and there are so many things that I wanted to achieve, and yet still felt that it was in my reach. And then everything kind of came crashing down, and I've started to reevaluate if I even want those things anymore. And so not only have I stopped working towards a lot of the goals that I was working to, because I honestly don't have the capacity at the moment, I have also stripped back my expectations of myself. The things that I would usually do every single day, I've not been doing so much. And my non-negotiables have been the bare minimum: drinking water, meditating, journaling, making my bed every morning. What else? Honestly, the bare minimum. Even movement wasn't a part of my routine because I simply didn't have the capacity to be able to move my body in a way that felt intuitive during this time. I was very limited to more restorative practices, which is extremely beneficial, but not always my choice of movement. And I didn't want to force myself to move in that way every single day if I didn't feel like it. And so giving myself grace in those aspects of my life, and also pulling myself away from, or not pulling myself away, but being mindful of what I'm consuming, music, TV, not that I watch TV, but I guess Netflix. I haven't been watching any Netflix. I logged out of all of my social media. I've even been reading very little. And I think sometimes less is more. Sometimes we overwhelm ourselves with information that we don't necessarily need, and it just becomes more clutter within our brain that isn't necessary. So really trying to strip back all of the outside influences that I've had around me during this time, and I think that's something that I'm going to continue to do over this next little while. Hopefully it lasts a little bit longer, and that is why I'm coming to you in this form, because I found during this time that I have been pulled to YouTube a little bit to watch very specific, informative videos about certain things, and this long form kind of content is something that I feel more called to. It feels so unaligned for me to be on the gram because everything has such a short lifespan, and it feels like I'm adding more clutter. It feels like I'm adding more stress to people's lives by posting on there. And the quantity in which you need to post just feels a little inauthentic for me. I would prefer to post longer, more quality content every little while instead of shorter, quicker content that lasts a day or two on someone's feed. So I guess moving forward, you will hear from me on the gram, but I am working towards more of this long form content on YouTube, and also potentially investing a little more time in my sunroom and sharing more of my beliefs and practices on there, and thinking of it more as a journal from me to you, rather than an Instagram where I would just be posting random things. So with all of that being said, I have come across a few interesting things during this time. I felt really called to dive into my natal chart a little bit more, and also my human design, which is both things that I've looked into in the past and things that I've had readings done on. And at the time, I thought it was interesting, and I did take some things on board and change a little bit. But what I find the most interesting is that my human design is the projector. And the projector's job is to wait for the invitation. And so by being forced to stop these past few weeks, it's brought into perspective a lot of things that I was pushing for, a lot of things that I was doing, and I feel like I put in so much work sometimes towards things, and they just don't get the traction that I hoped that they would, or it wouldn't get the same traction as someone else that did the exact same thing. And I realized it's because I'm not waiting for the invitation. It's because I'm pushing and trying to do all of these things instead of letting the things flow. And don't get me wrong, I can't just sit back and wait for something to happen, but I think I should be investing my time in building my knowledge rather than trying to market my knowledge, if that makes sense in a way. So building the knowledge to then be an asset to people rather than trying to prove that I'm an asset to people. So as you can see, I am still moving through quite a lot, but I am back in the studio this week teaching classes, and I hope to have a few more exciting things coming for you, especially online. But I am cautious not to overload myself at this time, and as the projector, also waiting for the invitations. I feel a little lost moving forward with the goals that I'm working towards, as I mentioned before, but I really think that if I focus on doing less, then more will start to come through for me. So that's what I'm focusing on at the moment. The other thing that I have in the back of my mind is that I ran a course earlier this year called the Angel Energy course, and it was all about tapping into your intuition and learning how to meditate and connect in with some psychic parts of yourself, I suppose you could say. And I am looking at relaunching this, so I would love to know if you're interested. I got quite a lot of interest for the first one, but a few people didn't quite bite the bullet and join. So if you were someone that missed out and you're still really keen, I would love to know. And I was also contemplating doing some more informative videos about energetic healing, about psychic readings and human design. So if that's something that you would be interested in, please let me know, because I have some friends that are amazing at this stuff. So it wouldn't just be me telling you about it. I would get some experts to really talk you through what it's all about, so you could see if that's maybe something that you wanted to dive in a little deeper for yourself. Because I know for me, the groundwork that I've put in with my healing and my self-study, I suppose you could say, has really created such a strong foundation for me to move through this extremely difficult season of my life. And I'm really grateful that I had that foundation, because as I said earlier, if I didn't have this foundation and the support network around me that I do have, it would have been, and I don't know how I would have moved through. So with all of that said, I am going to go. That's my life update. My goal for this next little while is to do less, not to do more. And I hope to keep seeing all of you in the studio. If you're not in Cairns and you want some more online things, please also let me know. And I may also be able to swing some online content your way. Alrighty, bye guys.